From R.D. Smothers Wealth Management, this is The Retirement.
When you retire, if you want an exciting life, you need a boring investment strategy.
Matters.
If you enter into retirement without a plan for income, you're not retired, you're simply unemployed.
Podcast.
Hey, this is your host, Dale Smothers, and you're listening to the Retirement Matters Podcast. My hope is that you will find the information you need in every single show on how to do one of the three things: either saving more money more efficiently, planning better for your future where you can live in retirement worry-free, or my favorite, how you can live a happy and fulfilled life in this life you have been given. We know that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending it listening to this episode of the Retirement Matters Podcast. On this episode of the Retirement Matters Podcast, we take a look at some companies that traditionally do pretty well when a Republican is in office as President of the United States. Now, these companies also do well when Democrats are in office, but they do a little bit better when a Republican agenda is at the forefront. For this reason, I want to show you a couple of things that you may want to reconsider before just going all in on a America First agenda, at least for the time being. And I'm certainly not against an American First agenda, neither in the White House nor in your portfolio, but you do need to understand what to expect over the next 6 to 12 months as we begin to right some wrongs that have developed in the last 2 decades, directly impacting what we will know as the market over the next 6 to 12 months will be the war for free trade. There will be tariffs that will be put into place that will affect not only foreign companies, but companies in the U.S. who deal with foreign products or maybe just have their current products manufactured overseas, particularly in Asia. Now, we also go a little bit deeper into what you should be doing depending on where you are in retirement for this coming correction or volatility at the least that we expect to see in the market as a new president takes over. This typically does happen, and I do think it's going to be a little bit sharper in this particular first year of the Trump presidency than we have seen over the last few presidents and their first years in office. But whether we're right or we're wrong, being able to position yourself in a way that safeguards against downside market risk is the ultimate goal as we approach income phase. So again, this depends on where you are in your retirement journey. So as we wrap up this intro and get to this week's episode, I want you to be aware that we're here for you if you need us to bring some clarity to a situation that you're facing, either in retirement, right before retirement, or several years before retirement. We can at the very least point you in the right direction. Give our team a call, 270-600-PLAN, and we would be happy to set up a no-cost consultation addressing the specific matters that you want to discuss. So with this out of the way, and my normal weekly reminder to like, share, or comment, I'm going to get to this week's episode of the Retirement Matters podcast titled, Where to Invest as 2024 Comes to a Close. Enjoy the show. Good morning to you. I hope you're doing well and you are ready to start discussing all things retirement matters. Got a lot of really good stuff to talk about today. We're going to go into some tools that need to be used in retirement planning, some tools that you may be presented by certain salespeople that you might want to think twice about or even avoid if at all possible. We might even discuss some of our picks going into quarter number 1 of 2025 and some positions that you may want to have your money in, depending on where you are in your journey. And I would like to even talk about some stocks that traditionally do well under a Republican president with a new regime change at the top. What do we need to be doing to make sure that we are okay in our retirement plan? All of this, as well as some discussion around taxes in retirement coming on today's show. Cannot wait to get started. But before we go into anything in today's episode, we've got to stop and pause for positivity. This is the portion of the show, if you're not familiar, where we dive a little bit deeper into the positive things of life, whether it be a positive thought some positive news. Maybe it's just a way to think a little bit differently, or maybe it's some inward reflection and maybe looking at things from a different perspective, maybe considering the alternative viewpoint. Our fellow man sees things different than we do. And it's not that one of us are right or one of us are wrong. It's just a different perspective. And sometimes, as you've heard me say several times before, it seems as if the news media tries to tear us apart. We have a lot more in common than we do in differences. And this is where we like to take some time to just highlight those. Something that was said recently, I don't know if you're a Kentucky basketball fan or not. I myself, I'm a Kentucky fan. I like to watch those games with my dad and with my two boys, Matthew and Andrew. We like to watch those games, generational fans here, if you will. I remember my dad as a young boy. I remember being right in front of my dad whenever the Christian Laettner shot went in. Still to this day, remember that being a heartbreak for my dad. I didn't quite grasp what was going on at the time. Probably very similar to how my two boys are right now, 4 and 8 years old. But I did know that whatever we were watching was really important, and I'd better pay attention to it. And so, we like to carry on that tradition. And now more than ever, or at least certainly more than what it has been in the last 15 to 20 years, there is a lot of optimism surrounding Kentucky basketball. We've got a new coach, and Coach Pope seems to be a very, very intelligent man, a very humbled man, and he certainly plays for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back. But not to make this a basketball talk here, I want to go to something he said this weekend that I thought was pretty remarkable. It's a very simple statement, and it makes a lot of sense once you think of it. But he mentioned how his team prepares for games and how his players prepare for the game that's at hand. He says, we do not concentrate on the outcome that we don't want to have happen. We don't concentrate on the negative. Instead, we put all of our attention, our time, and our focus into what we want to happen. Perhaps in his world, that looks a little different than what we are going to mention today, but the application remains the same. How we apply that statement to our life is certainly going to provide us a more fulfilled life, less worry, less stress. And when I heard him say this, I remembered a small graph that I saw probably about 2 years ago that I thought was rather interesting. It's in the same context, and it was a Venn diagram. I'm sure you're familiar with Venn diagrams. They were actually made pretty famous throughout this most recent campaign. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But Venn diagrams are two circles that overlap one another, and it's meant to reference or explain two topics that are not related to one another except in very small areas. And so a Venn diagram in that overlapping piece of the circles where they touch, that is meant to represent the context in which they are related. And in this particular Venn diagram, there was a label at the top of one of the circles that said, the stuff that you care about, the stuff that's important to you. And at the top of the other Venn diagram, it was the stuff you can control. And where those two intersect, it was colored in, it was shaded. And it had an arrow pointing to it that said, this is what you should focus on. So it's not about focusing on everything that you're worried about or everything that you care about. And it's certainly not focusing on everything that you can control. It's about the things that you can control that you are worried about that you should be focused on. And we spend a whole lot of time worrying about or focusing on too much negativity, most of which we cannot control. And for that reason, it robs us of the joy in living the life that we desire. And if we think deeply about this topic, we can even bring up a biblical reference where the master was teaching. I think this is in the Gospel of the book of Matthew, where he's teaching and he says, take no thought of tomorrow. In other words, don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. The Lord will supply. And he goes on to use an example about the birds and how that the birds do not sow, nor do they reap, but they are plentiful. They have plenty to eat, and they find seed wherever they need it. This is a very impressive way to think through life, and it's certainly not one that we consider very often in the world that we are presented. Many times, if we're not careful, the news, all of the noise of this world will make us worry about things that are not that important, nor can we control, and it will rob us of our joy. So this is what my challenge is for you this week. Don't focus on the things that we don't want to have happen. Rather, focus on the things that we do desire to have happen, especially those things that we desire and we are in control of. Think positive thoughts. We are what we think we are. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. These types of topics, these types of statements, these types of quotes, and these types of life mantras will help us lead a life that is more positive. And I know that life is not always sunny days. We don't always experience the rainbows. Sometimes there's some rain. But I will tell you that if we truly have faith in the Master, we can take his words of wisdom, as well as perhaps Coach Pope's words of wisdom, and live by them. That's our challenge this week. Take no thought on tomorrow. Don't worry about the things you don't want to have happen. Instead, focus on the things that you do, and worry only about the things you can control. All right, we're going to a quick break. When we come back, we're coming back with more Retirement Matters. Let's just jump into some stocks that do pretty well under Republican presidents for the most part. I think that's going to be an interesting little topic. We'll spend some time on that, and we'll jump to some of our picks here at RDS Wealth going into 2025, what you should be doing with your money. If you're concerned about market corrections, we're going to give you a couple ways to maybe offset some of those losses. And of course, we're here for you if you ever need any assistance. 270-600-PLAN. Let's jump to a quick break. We're coming back with more right after this message.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Looks like we have about a 72% chance of a successful landing today.
Did you catch that? A 72% chance of success? No one would fly on this airline. But you'd be surprised how many people take this approach to their own retirement. This is Dale Smothers, your host of the Retirement Matters Show. Join me right here each week as we discuss ways you can gain confidence in your retirement plan. Good decision-making, time-tested strategies, and a well-written plan will allow you the luxury of relaxation, even when you're going through those panic-inducing, turbulent times. As the host of the Retirement Matters Show, we will teach you how to keep your retirement on track, making sure that your destination is everything you wanted it to be.
Tune in for the Retirement Matters Show with Dale Smothers. Also, check out the Retirement Matters podcast. Just search for Retirement Matters with Dale Smothers on the podcast platform of your choice.
All right, welcome back to the show. I got a lot of feedback from last week's episode where I was making some comments about the Republican and Democratic presidents and how that the market is slightly favored when perhaps the Democrats are in office at the top of the ticket, and then that the House and Senate are split. And I've got plenty of research to back up that context, but at the same time, it's not that big of a difference. It's a very slight edge, which tells me it's not about who is in office. Instead, it's about where you are in your journey and what opportunities lie ahead for a particular situation. Right now, I find us as a country about to enter into a tariff war that is going to perhaps fray our relationship with China, rightfully so, if you ask me. The fair trade between U.S. and China has not been there for quite some time, and it is time to right that wrong. We have an impeding World War III situation that is brewing right now in Eastern Europe with Russia and Ukraine. and the whole decision that has been made over the last couple of days to allow Ukraine to fire deep into Russian territory with U.S.-made missiles. We have a lot of talk right now with Iran and Israel, a lot of headwind. And because of this, there are challenges, but there are certainly opportunities. We also have, when we come back to the domestic side of things, we are staring down a $36 trillion national debt. This is not even including things like Medicare expenses and Social Security expenses over the next 20 to 30 years. We are just talking about the debt that we owe other countries and the U.S. people. This is concerning. $36 trillion worth of national debt is an alarming number, especially when it is much more than our GDP, our gross domestic product. We also have a potential for what we call the government efficiency department that has been created to start cutting certain things, which will certainly help our spending as a country, I hope, but it may very easily hurt companies that are usually benefited from things like war or just Republican presidents in general. Those particular types of stocks are what we call aerospace and defense stocks. Historically, and I've got a lot of data to back this up, aerospace and defense stocks tend to do pretty well with the Republican president in office. There is a lot of spending typically on boosting up our military, at least in the last 100 years. There is typically a lot of spending on making sure that our country is safe globally. And the geopolitical side of that means that we have to buy and build more, bigger, better, faster, and stronger. Well, with that mentality, a lot of companies like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, these companies are typically jockeying for government contracts to build more. Boeing is a good example. Build more, build better, build faster. And, what we see, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize this, ironically, we have a potential rocket scientist heading up the efficiency department. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that the government contracts pay extremely high prices for very ordinary things. I've got a boat myself. I'm a boat owner. I've got a lot of friends who own airplanes. And one of the things that's funny about that is that you can take a screwdriver that you bought from Lowe's, and it may be worth, say, $15 for a screwdriver set. Let's just make it a set of screwdrivers. It's 3 or 4 different screwdrivers. You can pick it up at Lowe's for $15. If it is an airplane screwdriver, it comes from an airplane store, that may be a $50 set of screwdrivers. If it's from a nautical store and it's for boats, it may be a $30 set of screwdrivers. Boat owners, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Airplane owners, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, that same set of screwdrivers, if it were under a government contract, may be worth $100 to $150 for the same set of screwdrivers. Screws are priced up at 500% and 600% because they're under government contract. Bolts, all the tools that are necessary. Perhaps we could look at the sheets of metal or steel that are used to wrap these war machines. These things are marked up exponentially. And I would imagine that as we start to see the Department of Government Efficiency go through the balance sheet, that will be some low-hanging fruit for them to start cutting. And with that in mind, what is typically really good for aerospace and defense stocks, like the ones that I just mentioned, it may actually lead to a little bit of a reset. We might see their profit margins slashed just a little bit. And with that, because everything is priced to perfection in the market, that may lead to a little bit less than stellar performance, or at least less than what we're used to seeing in a Republican-led administration out of those big aerospace and defense companies. So just be aware of that. Be careful going into this thinking, oh, we should always be buying aerospace and defense. While that is oftentimes the case, this time may be just a slight bit different. But there are a couple of sectors in the S&P 500 that tend to do pretty well under Republican presidents, and there's nothing that seems to be keeping them from doing well this time around either. Things like the energy sector, let's call it ExxonMobil, for instance, if we're going domestic, or maybe it's financials. These companies like JP Morgan Chase or Visa, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, just a few off the top of the head. These companies will probably tend to do pretty well, especially as we see interest rates bouncing around and perhaps bank margins becoming a little bit larger. Financial deregulation is going to be beneficial for us in this next 4-year cycle. That is going to assist these companies to continue to make more and more profit, and ultimately price shares go up, dividends increase, and things look really good on the horizon. But, and there is a but here, we will likely see a little bit of pullback. This most recent Trump bump is likely to lead to a little bit of a Trump sell-off, especially as he gets into office and begins to put into effect things like a tariff on all incoming goods from certain countries. Depending on how big and how broad that tariff may be, will determine how aggressive we will see a pullback. But it is likely that we see a pretty significant reset, or I hate to say the word reset. Let's call it a correction in the market. And this correction, while it is normal to see, especially after having such a high rise in the market so quickly, this correction may lead to panic, fear, worry. And this is why I want you to know that depending on where you are in the market, you should be doing certain things right now in preparation for that. Depending on where you are in your retirement journey, you should be doing things that may altogether be different than your neighbors, because it doesn't matter when you transition into income phase how well your account grows nearly as much as it matters how well your account weathers a downturn in the market. You will see yourself start to panic and worry even more as you are taking income from your account and suffer significant losses. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to reset, and we're going to come back with a couple of things that you could be looking at depending on where you are in your retirement journey. If you're close to retirement, if you're 5 to 10 years from retirement, maybe you are 20 years from retirement and you have set out too long and you've missed this most recent run-up in the stock market. There are things for you to be doing and ways to reposition your accounts. We're going to go through a couple of those scenarios when we get back from this break in just a second. Don't go anywhere. We're coming back with more Retirement Matters after this.
It's 4th and 1 with 2 seconds left in the game. Less than 1 yard separates you from victory. You have the best running back in the league, but your coach calls a Hail Mary.
As silly as that sounds, we see a lot of retirement managers being far too aggressive with your investments when a more conservative play would be a better fit. You have questions, we have answers.
Contact R.D. Smothers Wealth Management, 270-600-PLAN. That's 270-600-7526.
All right, welcome back to the show. Let's jump into this together. If you are close to retirement, guys, you should be positioning yourself in ways that allow you to weather the downturned markets that may face us over the next 6 to 12 months. Now, I'm going to tell you, we've bid ourselves much higher than I thought was possible in the last 2 to 3 weeks even. We've seen continued highs hit the market, which is always a good thing. But what I'm afraid of is that people who should be on the conservative side are just now starting to get more and more aggressive because the animal spirits have been unleashed in the market. The animal spirits meaning everyone out there thinks that it is time to buy, and for that reason, the market goes higher. And the ones who didn't buy will chase that and buy right around the time that some people think it's a good time to sell. Prices start to level off and then fall. And everyone who got into it hoping to make a quick buck, especially those who got into it at the very top hoping to make a quick buck, are the first ones to start selling, and it becomes a self-fulfilled prophecy. So what do we need to be doing if we're, say, 5 years or less from retirement? Well, the first thing you need to be doing is building an income plan, knowing how much income you need, how long it's going to last, where you're going to take it from. When are you taking Social Security? What types of accounts do you own? What are the taxes on those accounts? And from there, how much risk do you need to take? How much risk do you need to take to hit the return that you need and require to then ultimately generate the income you desire? This is going to give you a lot more insight on what you should be buying and how you should be allocating your accounts. This takes a lot of practice, and a lot of very finite details must go into this. We would love to be someone to sit down with you and help you design this, but whether it's us or someone else, just make sure that they are a retirement income planner. Make sure that they know how to build a retirement income plan and then execute on that plan with as little risk as possible. Let me give you 2 examples of what you should not be doing in this phase, and that is buying an annuity with everything you own just because someone knocked on your door and said, here's a really nice Athene annuity. Now, if you've ever been pitched an annuity, especially from a salesperson, it's probably either an Athene annuity or an Allianz annuity because they pay big money to have people out networking in your area. If you're close to retirement, you're going to get pitched one of these 2 contracts, and you should be very, very careful before jumping into them. I'm not telling you those companies are bad. I'm telling you that if it's not used correctly, it can jeopardize your retirement. What you thought you were doing to safeguard against market losses could lock in money for life that never grows another day of your life. I am not a huge fan of these types of annuities, and they're positioned a lot by insurance salespeople. Be careful of those. I'll tell you another thing you should not be doing, and that's putting all your money into mutual funds because, quote unquote, they're safer, and then just withdrawing income as you need it. Without putting a plan together, you cannot invest your money. If you're less than 5 years away from retirement, or let's just say if you're over the age of 59 and a half, call us. 270-600-PLAN. We need to put together a very specific plan for you. If you're over 5 years from retirement right now, and whether you have missed out on this most recent market movement, or you are just wanting to make sure that you are growing your money over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years to reach a point in retirement, this is what you need to be doing. You need to be moving any gains that you have earned recently into index funds. Tracking the S&P 500 is very simply done by buying a stock called SPY. And this particular stock is going to give you the upside of the S&P 500 as well as all the downside of the S&P 500. It's very low cost, but it's going to give you all of the ups of the S&P 500 as well as all the downs of the S&P 500. And what it's going to do is diversify your money across 500 different companies so that you don't have to worry about one particular company that may have bid very, very high lately falling to the floor. You're going to have exposure to things like Amazon and Apple and Tesla and Nvidia and Microsoft and all of those things that are just flying high right now. But you're also going to have exposure to those that are steady Eddie types of stocks. And a lot of those stocks have been bid higher than they should be. This is where when the big correction takes place, if it does at all, you have an opportunity to buy in at some low points, taking something that may be down 15 or 20% and purchasing something that's down 30 or 40 or 50%. Because for the entire market to fall, some of these big names have to come way down. So indexing and waiting on the correction. And because you don't want to be too exposed to risk, maybe you're considering balancing your portfolio out with some buffered ETFs. Maybe you've got bonds or bond funds. Maybe you look at T-bills or treasury notes. And depending on how far away you are from retirement and how much you can stomach volatility, you may want to dip your toe in cryptocurrency. But I tell you that very cautiously because cryptocurrency comes with a high degree of volatility. It's all over the place. 10 to 15 years from now, can it be higher? Of course it can. Can it be at zero? It certainly can. And this is why we need to put things into those risky assets that we are okay losing. And there's not a lot of people out there that have much of that money to go around. So, what do we need to be doing when we are about to retire? That's totally different than if someone is 20 to 30 years from retirement. But either way, it requires discipline, it requires a plan, and it requires someone who can assist you when you are about to make a major decision. That's where RDS Wealth comes in. RD Smothers Wealth Management is here, especially for those who are over the age of 59 and a half, to help navigate the entire gambit of decisions that you are about to face as you approach retirement years. Give us a call and we can help you build the retirement you have always imagined. All right, guys, that's the show this week. I appreciate you tuning in each and every week. A lot of things that we got to cover. I wish we could have gotten to taxes in retirement. We just talked a little bit too long about individual stocks and what you should be doing in your retirement journey. But again, I hope that was educational for you and that we didn't go too deep, that we lost you. Of course, if there's anything that you had questions about on this show, you give us a call, 270-600-PLAN. We would be happy to assist you, and we would even be happy to sit down with you and be a second set of eyes on your portfolio if you need assistance. I have talked to several people this week who've said, Dale, we've been listening to you for years, and we finally decided to come sit down. I asked them why it took so long, and some of them say, well, I was just a little bit intimidated. I'm telling you, there is nothing at all for you to be intimidated about our team. We're here to assist you and, again, make this retirement everything you have imagined. We're not here to tell you you didn't do something right or to tell you you're doing something wrong. We are simply here to be a sounding board for you and to be a place that you can come when you are making big decisions. Retirement is one of those. Give us a call and we'll assist you in doing it right. All right, and with that, I'm wrapping up today's episode of the Retirement Matters. I hope you've enjoyed. Until we talk again next week, whether it's in person or it's right here on this show, always remember, save money, plan well, and live happy in retirement. God bless.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and RD Smothers Wealth Management are not affiliated companies. Investing involves a risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. RD Smothers Wealth Management is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by RD Smothers Wealth Management.